Welcome to Centre Court, all thanks to OMF, Australian Design and Own. I'm Bianca Chatfield and Madi Browne is alongside me. It's all about the World Cup. Things are getting really exciting,
It is. I mean, I leave next Monday. I can't actually believe we're nearly here. But yeah, it's all getting exciting and hopefully I can give as much information as I know about it. Obviously for our final ep, it's exciting. Last one. I can't believe we're here.
I know, and I know I said it's all about the World Cup. We will do a little bit on SSN.
Yeah.
So let's get to the weekend that was, all thanks to OMF. Upgrade your sleep game with a quality mattress from Australian Design and Owned OMF. All right, so when we talk about what happened on the weekend, obviously there were no games. We're still, I think, living off that excitement of the SSN Grand Final. But it is about the 8th team, this licence, this, I guess, mystery that none of us really know anything about. However, there was an article in the paper on the weekend, Super Netball Trades 11th hour talks to determine whether signing window opens ahead of the World Cup. So we know July 14th was a big day in netball.
It was.
It meant that if the collective bargaining agreement, if the team's participation agreement were all agreed to with the Players Association and Netball Australia, plus the 8th licence was ready to be announced, then that would open up the window for players to be able to start signing with clubs or at least have discussions with clubs from today, July 17th. So what's happened?
Well, I mean, one, we still don't have, obviously, the announcements of the 8th licence. Players are, like the Diamonds, are actually leaving on Thursday. So I think this window is continually being pushed back. We talk about that pressure and that element of stress that's been placed on some of these Diamonds going away. Obviously, we know that every player, every staff member is out of a contract. But as this kind of Netball World Cup looms, I think this window is going to be pushed out well and truly after Netball World Cup. You cannot expect these players to go and play in a major tournament going, oh my goodness, where it's at. Netball Australia have let the players know, the Diamonds know, that obviously any injuries, concerns and all of those, they will cover those costs. But there's still that element of there's no security beyond even getting past the World Cup. So, I mean, we would have hoped that maybe, yes, we could have obviously started the talks, but it's just getting too close, and I think it's going to be pushed back now.
Well, and also, don't forget, there's been some, I guess, rumours around some of the big name players will make decisions to not stay in Suncorp Super Netball because they would choose to go somewhere else. And I thought, I don't know about that. This is I believe, the best league in the world. I think everyone will want to stay and we'll just kind of have to ride out this rocky time. But on Friday, Jiva Mentor announced that she, I think really sadly, is not going to be playing in Australia next season. She has chosen, she had offers from 3 different leagues and she's chosen to go across back to her homeland and play in the English League over there. And I mean, obviously she's closer to her partner who lives in France as well. Big loss. And then obviously Rani Samason as well has decided to go and play in New Zealand ANZ Premiership rather than to stay and try and find a team in SSN.
Well, I think for some of these players, as we said, we knew New Zealand cut-off was early July, and obviously Friday, July 14th was a cut-off for any England team. So some of these players, this unknown of, you know, will I get an offer? They may have had some chats with teams. You know, I think even for someone like a Jiva, maybe that element of, you know, you might be coming as more of a mentoring role and someone that might be coming off the bench, but we really want you to be there to kind of coach and support some youngsters. And maybe she's like, you know what, I still really want to play and I'm still got plenty more to give. So going to the England League, playing on home soil again, obviously reconnecting with some of those fans and young players, part of the Roses. I think that's something obviously, you know, she's very passionate about. So obviously had to make the call. And as you said, it's sad that some of these big name players have kind of been forced into making this decision maybe earlier than they wanted to, purely because this kind of looming expectation of when is this going to be announced, when are we going to have detail, just hasn't, obviously, we haven't got a date. So they have to make a choice. Otherwise, it's sad. We actually may find that some players might not play at all.
Oh, I know. I hope that doesn't happen. But we're still waiting, like you're still waiting to find out what happens next. Hopefully that is all decided soon. That was the weekend that was. Thanks to OMF, Australian Designed and Owned. It's now time for Maddie's Minute. And this is when we turn all of our attention to the World Cup. all thanks to Flight Centre, your real deal centre, playing centre for over 40 years.
Well, we always say I'm the mathematician on this table because I can actually read a ladder and I can look at some stats and things like that. So I thought, you know what, my Maddie's Minute should be about Netball World Cup stats. So we're about to embark on the 16th World Cup in history. There are 4 nations that have only ever played in all of them, and that is obviously Australia, England, Jamaica and New Zealand. There's actually only 3 nations that have ever won it. So Australia, New Zealand and Trinidad and Tobago.
Can you believe it?
I know, which was an outright draw in one of the years that we were not born, but it was a long time ago. Australia are obviously the most successful, and even though we do not obviously hold the Netball World Cup at the moment, New Zealand obviously from 2019, I still feel like we are the hunted and the one that everyone wants to knock off. Australia have actually won 11 out of 15. One was a draw with New Zealand, but 10 outright. Another stat is Kat Tuiviti, who's obviously played for New Zealand, played for Samoa, is actually going to play for Tonga. So I don't think there's any other player that has played for 3 different countries at a Netball World Cup. She's obviously an outstanding player. We know her name very well. We know what capabilities she has, but what an outstanding kind of, I guess, achievement for her, because we also know that you have to sit out for cycles. So you've had to sit out for nearly an 8-year cycle to be able to represent a different country. So she's been around a long time and she's still got it in her. 3 nations, Tonga and Wales are actually in this time. Northern Ireland are obviously out along with Samoa. And my last one, 102 out of 192 players will actually make their Netball World Cup debut. And 8 out of those players will be making their international debut. So only 90 players have actually gone to a World Cup before. There's a lot of players that obviously haven't. I haven't been to a Netball World Cup, but you have. Talk about the excitement of a Netball World Cup, because a Commonwealth Games is obviously a multi-sport event, but a Netball World Cup, it's just netball fever.
Netball fever, absolutely. I went to New Zealand for the World Cup, and for me, it was the Com Games and World Cup. They're the pinnacle, aren't they, of our sport? So to be able to go to both was, you know, what always in my head was my goal. And at the World Cup, it was 2007.
Wow.
Like, it was that long ago that I actually went. I was really only new into the team, and it just felt like, to me, like I was kind of there and enjoying the ride and got to be a part of it with players like Liz Ellis, you know, Sharone McMahon, Kath Cox. They were all there dominating in the starting 7. And I remember sitting there in the final thinking, oh, I wonder if I'm going to get on here. And if not, I was enjoying the spectacle.
You've got the best seat in the house. You're watching these amazing players.
Exactly. But for me, I think having it over in New Zealand as well, it was like, we know they love their netball. We know that, you know, they had a 24/7 netball channel on TV. So you could watch every single game. It was all on everybody's TVs. There was so much news in the paper. You had to be really careful because everybody really hated Australia and wanted us to lose. Everyone wanted New Zealand to win. But I just remember the difference between the Com Games and the World Cup was that the focus is all on you as a sport. There's nothing else going on around you. And that can be overwhelming at times, but also, I mean, someone like me, I love that pressure. I enjoy that pressure, but some players don't love that. Some people, though, it's the absolute pinnacle to be able to get to a World Cup. They get to go and sit and watch all these other countries play. You learn about so many other ways that countries play, but also all these incredible players that you get to see that you would never get to see play before.
And some are, you know, even being exposed on this international stage, and then all of a sudden they come and play in SSN and you're like, wow, look at that talent. Because it's also an opportunity for coaches to go out there and see what's up and coming, where else could we pull for obviously Suncorp Super Netball. And even you talk about that element of, you know, kind of superstar, pop star vibes. Kelsey even mentioned that in Liverpool. She's like, honestly, even being Australia, we were like, obviously, you know, directed out with security guards. She's like, we honestly felt like the Beatles in Liverpool. So she said, you know, like it was like One Direction, the Beatles. She goes, I can't even imagine what the England team must have felt like, but she said we all felt like rock stars because every person that loves netball is there and embracing every single bit of it.
And every other country that's there too, who don't get to hang out with and see the Australian Diamonds play and see the Silver Ferns play and the Jamaican Sunshine Girls. You know, you play against these teams and they want photos with you after the game. And that, like, I remember Sharone McMahon was just someone that everyone idolised. Even us in her team, we idolised her. But everyone wanted a photo with her. And after a game, so we're like, we beat you by like 60 goals.
But can I still have a photo?
It was really cute. I love that part about it. It's a very And it's an amazing event. You're going to love being over there for it in Cape Town. Let's take a look, though, now at what the Aussie team looks like.
Yes.
You know, if you haven't seen what the team looks like, let's take a look. Obviously, huge moment there for Jamie Lee Price, who is in the side. And then the reserves, Ruby Bakewell-Doran, Kate Maloney and Danelle Wallum.
The difference, obviously, with this list is from previous tournaments is, you know, usually you start a tournament and you cannot bring in any of those reserves. Those reserves go over and they're part of the whole training process. But this time, if an injury does happen, because we have seen nations have had some really serious, obviously, injuries to big name players through a tournament, and that really derails their whole campaign. So you can obviously add in any of those 3 reserves at any time throughout the tournament. So they're sitting in the wings, ready for their opportunity if it arises. But those top 12 names are the ones that are obviously going to be donning the green and gold to start, and I'm sure after a lot of them have obviously travelled to Cape Town earlier in the year for the quad series, they'll be ready to shake things up, and I'm sure in their preparation nothing is going unturned because they know that every nation is out there going, we just want to top the Aussies.
Now, that was a very long Maddie's Minute, all thanks to Flight Centre, your real deal centre. Now we're going to look even more in depth at the World Cup. Let's take a look at the pools and how the pools are going to work. There's 4 different pools, A, B, C and D. A and B, so Australia, Tonga, Zimbabwe and Fiji. Obviously, you think Australia would end up top of Pool A.
Yes.
However, who do you think is going to challenge them and be just a difficult team to play against?
Well, I actually think the Tonga team's probably the one. We obviously know there are some familiar names that have played in SSN or obviously previous tournaments within Australia. They'll obviously shake it up a little bit, I think. The most difficult thing in that first round of your pool games is you're playing against unorthodox styles of play. You know, you're used to those systems. You're used to kind of predicting where the ball's going to go and being able to set up strategies to try and get intercepts. But a lot of those games are the ones where you walk off and you're absolutely exhausted because you've just been running around trying to go, I don't even know what's happening. I don't even think the other opposition's teams know what's happening. So Tonga's probably the one that'll test him. But Pool A and Pool B at the end of those first 3 games will join together and become a new pool. So then in that crossover, Australia are likely to meet obviously probably an England and a Malawi, which we know there's some incredible players in both of those teams, you know, a Cardwell and a Houseby and Mentor, all of those for England. Alongside them, Malawi, obviously Kwenda. So we're even going to see some of those SSN players that we love seeing play against some of our Aussies.
Yes.
After that, then it is that crossover, that top 2 crossing over. So unfortunately or fortunately, it's a good time. We will obviously cross over Australia and likely play obviously Jamaica or New Zealand to even make it to the gold medal match.
Okay, so let's take a look at the pools C and D to see what other countries are playing. Jamaica and South Africa are in Pool C. I reckon that's going to be a huge game to watch in the early rounds. And then in Pool D, New Zealand, Uganda, Trinidad and Tobago and Singapore. Uganda, they always are a surprise packet, aren't they?
They are. They don't have a lot of World Cup winning success, but as I said, it's usually some of those teams that you rock up and, you know, the top nations start to rotate. Sometimes it's about finding, you know, that groove of changing seamlessly, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, we should probably be winning by a lot more, and we're not. So yeah, I think there's some that will kind of ruffle some feathers, but those top 4 to 5 nations, I think obviously they'll continue to push each other and be there at the end. But yeah, it's probably one of those World Cups where you just go, it's not just an obvious who's going to make the gold medal match. There are a few contenders that could be really ultimate threats.
Definitely, and I think South Africa too, they're being coached by Norma Plummer, the former Australian Diamonds coach. She coached them back in 2015 at the World Cup.
Yep.
And she made huge inroads with them, with their players and the way they played. And now she's back, and she hasn't had a huge amount of time back within the mix with South Africa, but she is the only female coach of any of the African nations, which I find really interesting. And you watch, she will want to absolutely shake up what happens with the Jamaicas, New Zealand, and the Diamonds.
And we've talked about through SSN that advantage of that home court, that home crowd. I was there in January. It was a quad series. There was a 20-goal deficit at one stage between, I think it was New Zealand and South Africa. and the South Africans were cheering like they were winning. And it was like unbelievable. The scenes, the noise, the atmosphere. They were dancing. They were like thrilled to just be part of something so amazing. So I can't even imagine how it's going to be elevated to a totally new level. So I expect that crowd to really generate some hype and buzz around the South African team. And I wouldn't be surprised if they, you know, as I said, maybe knock off a big nation.
Okay, well, now I think we should talk predictions, Maddie, because I know you've got all your stats and facts here.
Love it.
With all your research that you've been doing, who do you think is going to trouble the Diamonds the most when they eventually all cross over, if they all cross over at some stage?
Well, I do think definitely New Zealand are probably the one that question mark. In January, watching them in the quad series, they were a little bit off, but we know Dame Nolene Tarua and how kind of, you know, she just is ruthless, I think, in her preparation. And there's been some articles coming across the ditch saying that she's been looking at NBA, how they work their defensive strategies. And we know New Zealand are really known for a zone, so how they will operate. They've also had nearly a 5 to 6 week lead up and preparation to a World Cup compared to our Australians.
Huge, isn't it?
Yeah,
Such
it
a
is.
difference.
And you could go, oh, maybe that's too much time, but we also know, yes, SSN is a great breeding ground for that experience, that international flavour, but time together does pay dividends. So I think they are probably the ones that, you know, if we cross over, could obviously be a shake-up. We know how good the Jamaicans can be, but the biggest thing for them is their mid-court. They just don't have that element. They're so good at the bookends, but just that really grind mid-court that obviously other nations have across the board, and the interchange as well.
And one interesting thing on Jamaica too is Australian Rob Wright has been working with them. Now, we saw that at Com Games. He was there. He was, you know, on the bench with them, coaching them through it all. And he's now had another 12 months spent with a lot of the Jamaican players, and especially the mid-court who have been, you know, in Jamaica, not necessarily, you know, out here playing in the SSN. Surely that's going to help them too.
Oh, there's so many Australian coaches within the mix of other nations, and we talk about how great SSN is to have those imports come, but I think it's great that we've also got that experience for our coaches to go and coach different styles and impart their knowledge. I mean, we've only got one team and there can only be one head coach in Stacey Mirinkovic. So it's great that we've got incredible coaches as well going to part that knowledge. Yes, it's awkward seeing them stand on that transverse line when the Jamaican, you know, national anthem's sung and they're just standing there and you're like, what are you doing even in those colours? But I also think it's a really good, obviously, stage to see our amazing coaches. Who do you think?
Ooh, look, I agree with you. I think New Zealand, you almost do not want to ever tip against them. Not against them, but you know what I mean? Like, you always know they've got a plan and it's very strategic and there's something brewing and they don't necessarily let people in to find out what that is. I really like that. I like the element of surprise that they bring to a major tournament like this. I'm not as confident in England being a dominant team over the World Cup. I know they've got Cardwell and Housby. I know that we've seen that. I know Jiva's there. I just don't think what we saw of them last year in a lot of their international games, I just don't think that they've got it in them to bring what the other nations are going to bring. Now, I could be completely wrong, and then this is going to come bite me if they end up winning the World Cup.
Well, you've got to have an opinion. That's what we're here to do. Here to have a dip.
I just can't see them matching it with New Zealand, Jamaica and the Diamonds. And I don't know if you agree with me, Mads, but Maddie and I were in with Fox Netball with the Diamonds. They were in camp. They've been doing some filming and they had their media day and we were in there with the team and I interviewed all the players and I walked away from that and I'm like, they're going to win it. Like, I really felt this confidence within the group, but also how connected they are.
Yeah.
I knew from the outside that they were connected, but I just got this real overwhelming sense of they're ready. And they've only just been in camp together for a couple of days when we saw them. So I don't know what it is. I'm backing the Diamonds.
100%. We're both backing the Diamonds. As I said, we have an opinion on who may ruffle their feathers or be a little bit of trouble. But yeah, I think it's funny how we are number one, obviously, but we don't hold the World Cup trophy, but we are still always the hunted.
Yes.
Regardless, there's always pressure, and I think sometimes the Diamonds thrive. We all know Diamonds are made under pressure, so why not us?
And I think the key is if they get injuries, like you said before, they've got the reserves.
Yeah.
And the way that they were treating, like, it's not the 12 and the 3 reserves, it is we're a team of 15. this is it. The 15 do everything together, and I really appreciate that because both of us have been in positions where we haven't been in that 12 and been a reserve, and it's really tricky. It's awful. It's the worst kind of punishment in a way. However, when you can be included at any time, you really need to be part of the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the Diamonds, we can't wait to watch. Maddie, all the best when you go over there. This is our last show of Centre Court for the year. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you to all of our loyal viewers who are posting every week and telling us your thoughts. We do certainly read them, and we've loved hearing what you've thought about what's happening. Thank you to everyone here at Sports Entertainment Network for putting together the show with Maddie and I. We've loved it. Thanks again, OMF. It's all brought to you by OMF, Australian Design and Own. And hopefully we'll catch you again next year.